Hey, welcome to Watchmen Waiting on the Lord. Today's October 26th, and there's some stories today. We're moving closer and closer to a ground invasion, and so I'm going to give you some stories today. And before I get to these stories, I'm going to read also. I'm going to read Psalm 83 at the end of this. This story is the Hamas tunnel city beneath Gaza, and I wanted to say two things before I started reading the story. So what was it? Oh yeah, the shooter in Maine. So that's actually quite close to where I live. I don't live in the States, I live in Canada, but that's very close to me. So I haven't read in depth, but I heard some stuff, and so I heard he was a gun instructor, and he was in the I guess the U.S. Army Reserves. I mean, that's pretty terrifying. You know, you have someone who not only knows how to use a weapon, but instructs others. I don't know if that makes him any better, but what could come of that? And the guy's still hidden. They still haven't found him, unless they haven't. I just don't know. But by the time I watched the video this morning, I learned of it early this morning. So 22 dead, and I don't know how many. Maybe 20. I saw 16, but who knows how many there are injured. You know what? It surprises me a lot. It surprises me a lot that someone with an AR-15 or whatever, semi-automatic, automatic, doesn't end up killing, 100 people. I don't get it. I don't get it how that doesn't happen. And I hope that's by God that design that doesn't happen. Who knows how much ammunition this guy has and where he is, and the only thing I can say to you is pray that they find him. I heard he has mental health issues and he was hearing voices, so you know, like you never know what's going on. I know that people with like schizophrenia, psychosis, you can't blame them no matter what they do, because they hear voices that command them to do things, and some people believe what those voices say, and some don't. So it's a pretty horrible situation. And before I read this, and I learned this off another Watchman channel, so I haven't looked into it, but I heard that Israel. So I gotta check if this is recording. I always gotta make sure. I heard that in the UN Assembly, I don't know if I think it was in the States, that Israel was, you know, talking back to China and to Russia, because China and Russia said, you know, they're trying to dictate what you can and can't do. And you know, we all know that Israel is always the pawn, right? They're always the pawn. They're the center of the world. This is God's land. That's all I have to say, because like I know my Bible. And so they try to use it as a pawn. So Israel says to China, Israel says the same thing to Russia. If you had 1,400 people outright murdered, but not just murdered, but murdered in a certain way, like, you know, the tortures can't really get worse. You saw, watch my last video and what I said and what I read about Antiochus Epiphanes. So it's like that. Israel says, what would you do? And so they refer back to, you know, like Chechnya and you know, all of a sudden China is the human rights advocate, right? And for what? How long anyways, hundreds of millions have died due to communism, and they are not innocent by any means. Actually, they're a lot worse. And I'm not saying Israel's bad, because They have the right to not want terrorists living beside them who want to eradicate them. Pretty simple, right? And but you know what? I don't condone any violence at all. So you got to listen to this next story. I don't condone violence at all. If there's a way, then there's a way other than this. They have to go get them. They have to. I mean, what would you do? China, Russia, the States, every country would launch a campaign to do something. And the only reason is because this is a pawn and this is a spiritual battle. You know it's a spiritual battle? And I also learned off the Watchman channel that on California, some California campuses, they're giving extra credits to people who will, again, I don't know the truth to this yet, but this is what I heard in a story. Giving extra credits to Palestinian protesters. That's what these campuses are doing. And it's probably true because I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about it, that this is what these campuses are doing. This is why you don't send your kids to universities anymore. We're in such a bad time. Pardon me a second, I'm going to read this. This is the Hamas tunnel city beneath Gaza, a hidden frontier for Israel. And I know about war tactics, and I've seen a lot about and read a lot about Vietnam and the Viet Cong, and I'll give my take on this. So I'll read this in just a sec. My stomach's really bad, pardon me. So they want to use a nerve agent in these tunnels. I'm not gonna, and I don't even know if that's in this article. It probably isn't. But that's what they want to do. They want to use a nerve agent. Can you blame them? I'm not going to take a side here, but they want to save more lives that way. They wanted to, like, they could use the water from the sea. I don't know if that's what they would do. But there are hostages down there, right? You gotta feel sorry for the families because they know it. 300 miles of tunnel. Anyways, I'll read this, but I learned a lot about Viet Cong and what they did. What are they supposed to do, right? There are booby traps. There are, pardon me, I have to answer this. This is medication at my door. Hello?
Good afternoon, Mr. Keller. It's delivery from pharmacy.
Yeah.
I'm on my way. I should be there in about 5 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, see ya. Bye-bye. It's my pain medication delivery. So, and I might have to answer that. I will have to answer that. In Vietnam, like in the jungles and stuff, in the tunnels, the tunnel rats, the U.S. tunnel rats had to go in and root these people out. And in the jungle, they would have, and in these tunnels, they would have all sorts of traps. They would have snakes, like really poisonous snakes. They would have spikes covered over by soil and covered up traps, and they'd have spikes, and on top of those spikes they would put manure, like human manure, and so you would get diseased after you stepped into it. And they wanted to take as many people out of the war that way as they could, because that was just as good as killing someone to them, right? You take them out of the war. And they don't want to get into this, so I don't know. All I know is they want to use nerve agents. I'm not condoning anything, but I do agree that they should do something about Hamas. That's all I can say. Jerusalem, London, October 26, Reuters. What lies in wait for Israel, ground troops in Gaza, security sources say, is a Hamas tunnel network hundreds of kilometers long. I think it's 300 miles and 80 meters deep, which is about 200 feet, described by one freed hostage as a spider's web, and by one expert as a Viet Cong times 10. They're right about that. And you can also think about Iwo Jima, right? The Palestinian Islamist group has different kinds of tunnels running beneath the sandy 300 square kilometer coastal strip and its borders, including attacks, smuggling, storage, and operational burrows. Western and Middle East sources familiar with the matter said. The United States believes Israel's special forces will face, so the U.S. is in on this. They're part of this. Will face an unprecedented challenge having to battle Hamas militants while trying to avoid killing hostages held below ground, as U.S. officials say. So who knows if they're going to use this nerve agent. U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin noted that Iraq's 9-month-long battle to retake the city of Mosul from Islamic State might prove to have been easier than what awaits the Israelis. Likely to be a lot of improvised explosive devices, IEDs, a lot of booby traps, and just a grinding activity. You never know, right? Israel might have a good plan. Even though Israel has invested heavily in tunnel detection, including a sensor-equipped underground barrier called an iron wall, Hamas is still thought to have working tunnels to the outside world. Sorry, my stomach is really bad. I have a gallbladder issue and a throat issue. Like dystonia in my throat, but different. So, after the last round of hostilities in 2021, Hamas's leader in Gaza, Yahya al-Sinwar, said they started saying they destroyed 100 kilometers of Hamas tunnels. I'm telling you, the tunnels we have in the Gaza Strip exceed 500. So that's about 300 miles. Even if their narrative is true, they only destroyed 20% of the tunnels. But now they'll have, like the full access. Well, I guess, I don't know, actually. They want to root them out, right? Hostage witness. There has been no corroboration of the comment by Sinwar, who was thought to be hiding underground ahead of an expected Israeli ground offensive. But the estimate of hundreds of kilometers is widely accepted by security analysts, even though the blockaded coastal strip is only 40 kilometers long. With Israel in full control of Gaza's air and sea access and 60 kilometers of its 72 kilometers land borders, with Egypt 13 kilometers to the south, tunnels provide one of the few ways for Hamas to bring in weapons, equipment, and people. While it and other Palestinian groups are secretive about their networks, recently released Israel hostage, 85-year-old, I just read this the other day, Yocheved Lifshitz, said, "It looks like a spider's web, many, many tunnels," adding, "We walked kilometers under the ground." 85. Hamas believes that with Israel's overwhelming aerial and armored military superiority, tunnels are a way to cut some of those advantages by forcing Israel's soldiers to move underground in a cramped spaces the Hamas fighters know well. An Israeli military spokesman said on Thursday, "I won't elaborate on the number of kilometers of tunnels, but it's a high number, built under schools and residential areas." Urging the UN Security Council to intervene, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas has called for immediate cessation of aggression on Gaza. And moves toward a political solution instead of military and security solutions. Underground city. Israeli security sources say Israel's heavy aerial bombardments have caused little damage, so that you can think of Iwo Jima. If you know that story, if you've seen the movie Letters from Iwo Jima, go watch that. It's an excellent movie. Clint Eastwood did that movie. Have caused little damage to the tunnel infrastructure, with Hamas naval commandos able to launch a seaborne attack targeting coastal communities near Gaza this week. Although we have been attacking massively for days and days, the Hamas leadership is pretty much intact, as is the ability to command and control, the ability even to try and counterattack, said Amir Avivi. I'm going to have to go to my door in a sec. A former brigadier general whose senior positions in the Israeli military included deputy commander of the Gaza division, tasked with tackling tunnels. This is a whole city all over Gaza underneath, with depths of 40 to 50 meters. There are bunkers and headquarters and storage, and of course they're connected to more than 1,000 rocket launching positions. Other sources estimated depths of up to 80 meters, so they don't know. One Western security source said they likely have gas masks too. They run for miles. They're made of concrete and very well made. Think of the Viet Cong times 10. I don't think it's times 10, but it's pretty elaborate and long. They've had years and lots of money which to work with, which could have gone to the people. Another security source from one of Israel's neighboring countries said Hamas tunnels from Egypt remain active. The supply chain is still intact these days. These networks involved in facilitating coordination, and some Egyptian military offers. It's unclear if there's knowledge of this by the Egyptian army. He said, pardon me, I got to get my meds at the door. Pardon me a sec.
Really? Take care. Thanks a lot.
Sorry, I didn't expect so many interruptions. The supply chain is still intact these days. The network involved in facilitating coordination, and some Egyptian military officers. It's unclear if there's knowledge of this by the Egyptian army, said. A small number of narrower, deep smuggling tunnels were still operating until recently between Egypt and Gaza. Like, they probably have tunnels to Egypt that Egypt doesn't even know about, right? You think of the United States and Mexico, and it's not just this, a lot of countries are like that. For smuggling people, we know that, certainly in Mexico. According to two security sources and a trader in the Egyptian city of El Arish. But they had to slow a near halt since the Hamas war began. Egyptian officials didn't immediately respond to a request for comment. On Wednesday, Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said while inspecting military units in Suez that the army's role was to secure Egyptian borders. Professor Joe Roskin, a geomorphologist and geologist with Israel's Bar-Ilan University, said it was difficult to map the tunnel network accurately from the surface or space, adding Highly classified information was essential for 3D mapping and imagery visualization. Among the elite units tasked with going underground is Yahalom, specialist commandos from Israel's Combat Engineering Corps known as Weasels, who specialize in finding, clearing, and destroying the tunnels. Earlier this week, the Israel Prime Minister Netanyahu visited Yahalom fighters, telling them, "I rely on you. The people of Israel rely on you." Israel sources said that what awaits them is formidable, and they faced an enemy that has regrouped and learned from previous Israeli operations in 2014 and 2021. So the time that they've given them so far is too long, right? But they have to figure out how to do it. There are going to be a lot of booby traps. They have thermobaric weapons that they didn't have in 2021, which are more lethal. And I believe they acquired a lot of anti-tank weapons systems that they're going to try to hit our armored personnel carriers, tanks. Oh, they have thermobaric weapons. I thought they meant Israel. So it's the other side. A former brigadier general and former commander of the Combat Intelligence Corps. Sofran, who was also previously head of the Intelligence Directorate with Israel's Mossad spy agency, said Hamas would also be trying to kidnap soldiers. Of course, right? That's war. Daphne Richmond Barak, professor at Israel's Reichman University and author of the book Underground Warfare, said the conflicts in Syria and Iraq had changed the situation. And Afghanistan with all those IEDs, right? Taking out all the APCs and vehicles. What the IDF is likely to face inside the tunnels is also all the experience of all of the knowledge that has been gained by groups like ISIS and has been passed on to Hamas. So you know what I imagine? That's the end of the article. When I first, realized that they're going to invade, what would they do? Because they're going to be outperformed in almost every category. I could picture them putting like 100 tons of TNT under the ground, and like a wide area just blows up. That's what I've seen. That they did that in World War I. Do you know the Canadians in World War I they were digging. They were called vampires, but they had to hide underground, right, because of all the artillery, and so they had the Germans and Canadians, and the Canadians are the most formidable force in World War I. They dug under the Germans. They put I think it was 1,000 tons of TNT or something even more than TNT, and they outright killed 25,000 Germans. Go look that up. 25,000 Germans were gone. And that explosion, you can find that on YouTube. It shows it. It's very old, but you can see it. Yeah, I've read a lot about war, so I know these things. And so, pardon me. Sometimes when I do these videos, like the jab. I got the jab by Moder, you know that. And I got very sick, allergic reaction, and I have a gallbladder problem. It's a rare gallbladder disorder. I need it out, but doctors aren't willing to take it out because it's a functional disorder. So I get gallbladder attacks all the time, and it's like having a gallstone all the time. That's what it's like. So that's why I'm like this in these videos. I become very breathless. So I'm going to say this and cut it off. So, you might say this is just a prayer or something. I don't think this is just a prayer. Written by King David. So this is what people think is happening now. I don't think it's Ezekiel 38:39 right now, because it has to be unwalled, right? But it looks like unwalled villages attacked. But it's working its way up there. So I'm going to read this. Don't keep silent, O God. Don't hold your peace. And don't be still, O God. For behold, your enemies make a tumult, and those who hate you have lifted up their head. They have taken crafty counsel against your people and consulted together against your sheltered ones. They have said, come and let us cut them off from being a nation. Okay, so we know that's happening, right? But the name of Israel may be remembered no more. For they have consulted together with one consent. They form a confederacy against you. Look up who these people are, okay, when I say this, and read it yourself. The tents of Edom and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek. Philistia, so Philistia is the Philistines, which is, the Palestinians, and the inhabitants of Tyre. Assyria has also joined with them. They have helped the children of Lot, Selah. Deal with them as with Midian, as with Sisera, as with Jabin at the brook Kishon, who perished at Endor, who became a refuse on the earth. Make their nobles like Oreb and like Zeb. Yes, all their princes like Zebah and Zalmunna, who said, let us take for ourselves the pasture of God for a possession. O my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind, as the fire burns the woods, as the flame sets the mountains on fire. So pursue them with your tempest, and frighten them with your storm. Fill their faces with shame, that they may seek your name, O Lord. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Yes, let them be put to shame and perish, that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord, are the most high over all the earth. Thanks for watching today. See what happens, right? We'll see what happens.